All right, I have papers to give back to you. These are your, are we with me, gentlemen? Are you ready? Okay. I wanted to make a couple of comments. First of all, enjoyed your retellings. Those of you who just branched out and did something completely different, thank you. Fun. Got a lot of interesting stories. If I could not find your simile and or alliteration, I asked, where is it? I think I asked. Please remember, put, oh, very good, very good. But write it down. I'm old enough that I have to write down everything or I forget, but that doesn't mean you guys are young so you will remember. Couple of comments. First of all, I feel like we're all still, are we with me? Okay. Remember what a comma splice is when we join two sentences together with only a comma, which we can't do. We have to have a comma and then a conjunction, comma, and, comma, but, comma, or. Hang on. Or a semicolon. We can join two sentences with a semicolon. Oh, here. I need you to hold on to it for a minute or I'm going to get confused about what I've got. Also, many of you are not indenting your paragraphs. I don't understand. So every time we start a paragraph, we indent. We move in. If you're typing, it's generally 5 spaces. If you're handwriting, you just scooch it in a little bit. All right, it's just eyeball it. But we always, I mean, some of you are like, I know, but enough of you don't know that I should talk about this. This is the side of my paper, okay? And then I come in a few spaces on my first line. And then all the rest of my lines go out to the edge. And then when I start a new paragraph, you don't need to skip a space. What you need to do is just indent again. You see, and then this tells me that now we're starting a new paragraph, okay? So that's just a standard formatting thing. And it easily alerts your reader. There's a new paragraph starting. So I'm talking about something different now. The story is unfolding, or I've got a new topic if I'm writing a paper like the one you just wrote for me. So, okay. See, I still don't have it. Okay, Matthew. But that doesn't help. Okay, so Matthew is the one with the long hair. Okay, Matthew must get a haircut. Okay, that I will remember. I have to have a mnemonic device. I'm not saying you actually do need a haircut. I'm just saying that will help me remember. I don't care. Oh, I have 2 of yours. Okay, so here, I'll skip this one for a minute. Matthias has 2 pages that I was too lazy to staple. Ella. Owen, if I do one, I'll be fine. I don't need one for each of you. Okay, so I have somebody's, what I think is a rough draft. Is this someone's? It's yours? I'm pretty sure, I'm outing you in front of the class. Pretty sure your mom wanted you to rewrite this. And that's why there was writing on it. You see what I mean? So I just thought I'd tell you that. Okay, I will now collect your papers. So Matthias, this is your new one? Yes. Okay, all right. Awesome. Thank you, ma'am. Awesome. Okay. Do I have everybody's papers that has a paper for me? Did I write anything on the paper I gave back to you that you don't understand? Great. I think one of you, and I really don't remember who it was, but I think somebody in here, I was giving tips about using commas, and it might be worth giving it to everybody, because I sometimes in here, but my other students too, I get commas in strange places. Sort of like, Well, no, not, that's a normal, like, I understand why you put a comma there. It's not grammatically legal, but I get it. But sometimes I just get commas in strange places. And a comma is a pause. When you are reading and you reach a comma, you don't stop as long as you stop when you get to a period or an exclamation point or a question mark, but you pause a moment to take a breath. And if this is not a normal place in the sentence for you to pause, you probably shouldn't put a comma there. We put commas in lists, right? I went to the store and I bought eggs, butter, cheese, milk, and bread. And you see how if I just say eggs, milk, cheese, butter, bread, it just, I burn through the list and then you can't keep track. So in a list, I pause, I separate the things so that it makes sense. So when you read, when you proofread, and I hope you are all proofreading. If you are not, you should be. Do not ever type anything and then don't read it again and just give it to me. Read it. And preferably not the same day that you typed it. Preferably you get it done early enough that you can go back the next day and reread it. But when you read, pause every time you put a comma, just briefly, not for 10 seconds, but pause briefly. And if it just, there was a girl who lived, comma, in my neighborhood. Sometimes I get commas like that. There was a girl who lived in my neighborhood. It sounds like I'm talking about Harry Potter, the boy who lived or something. There was a girl who lived. If I pause there, it doesn't make any sense. So that will help you. If you struggle, if you say, I just don't know, she just puts commas in, and I don't know, it's a mystery to me. She's the mind reader, and she just knows where the commas go. It's because that's where I would pause if I were reading it out loud. Okay, we're going to do another paper like this today, but first, get your reading questions out, and let's talk about one of the most famous battles in the history of the world. I'm so excited. Plus, I'm going to read some cool stuff out of another history book that I predict the gentlemen in particular are going to enjoy, although the ladies may enjoy it as well. You will, when I say it, you will know. When I say it, you will know. So let me give you the intro before we talk about the reading questions. Persia. Persia was the king of the world. Once upon a time, it was Assyria. And if you remember your Old Testament history, the Assyrians are the ones who invaded Israel, the northern kingdom. Remember, Israel was divided into two kingdoms, Israel in the north, Judah in the south. The northern kingdom of Israel, the Assyrians came and they just deported everyone. They just destroyed it. Yes, sir. I think Jeremiah was the Judah. I think he was in the southern kingdom. That's all right. That was Babylon, yes. So, and it's so easy to get confused because just people are coming and wiping people out. Just large armies are coming and wiping people out. But it's Assyria. Assyria got conquered. I don't have my big map. Assyria is over here. Assyria is in where the Tigris and Euphrates are, okay. Assyria got conquered by Babylon. Babylon came through and started taking over everything, including the southern kingdom of Judah. And that's while Jeremiah is alive. And deported Daniel and his 3 friends to Babylon. They deport, why did they deport you? Is your middle name Daniel? Okay. See, I had to figure that out. But Babylon did not last either. Eventually, 2 kingdoms came together, the Medes and the Persians, and we just refer to them as the Persians. And they took Babylon, and they were the kings of the world. The night they took Babylon is my favorite for some, because it's creepy, my favorite story in the Old Testament. They were having a big party in Babylon, and they said, let's bring out all the gold dishes that we got from that temple in Jerusalem. That'll be fun. And do you remember? A hand appeared, no body, this is the part I like, just a hand. And it wrote on the wall. And they brought Daniel in. What does this writing mean? You have been weighed in the scales and found wanting. Your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. And it says that night they broke in. Anyway, these are the Persians that we're talking about now. All right. And the Persians deported the Israelites from Jerusalem, but only for about 70 years. In 70 years, they got to go back. And there was a Persian king named Cyrus. Cyrus was, the Bible says God put it in Cyrus's heart to send them back. Yeah, he was, actually, when you read history, he did some things that were very good, like a lot of kings did, but he was not. We don't know why he put it in his head to just send the Israelites back. He was sending other people back too. He was telling everybody, go build a temple to your God to pray for me. He didn't really understand there was one. But it worked out very nicely for the residents of Judah. Some of them were too old, like Daniel. He never went back, as far as we know. He was an old man by then. He just lived in the Persian Empire. But a lot of the young people went back. This is the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, and they went back and they rebuilt the temple. Okay, so Cyrus died, and he had a son named Cambyses who was a loon. He went nuts. He did really crazy things. He did crazy things. And finally, he died. And then there was no new Persian king. And so a group of people decided to have a contest to see who would win, and Darius won the contest. And Darius is the king that you read about this week. So Darius went down here and he conquered Egypt. Actually, the crazy guy, Cambyses, had conquered Egypt. But he went down to Egypt again. And at the beginning of your Dorothy Mills reading, he's going to Scythia. And the Scythians, okay, the water goes in here, and then it goes through there, and there's a big body of water called the Black Sea. Can you picture that? It's a big body of water. And the Scythians live around the Black Sea. They live mostly on this side, north of Thrace. And Darius decided he wanted to conquer them. And my first question is, why? Because they're alive, and he can. I think, and because they own something he doesn't have. I think this is his motivation. Anyway, he goes, and the problem with the Scythians is they don't really have cities. They're just nomads. They have their flocks and herds, and they travel around, and they graze wherever, there's grass for their flocks and herds to eat. And so how do you catch them? What city do you burn down when they don't have any cities? This was, but he couldn't catch them. They're really good at moving around. They professionally move around. And so he decided to go anyway. And he came across the strait, and there's another river. It's a very famous river called the Danube River. And it's up a little just north of my map. And he made a bridge, because the river Thrace was on this side, and the Scythians were on the other side. So he built one of these boat bridges. Where I have a river and I just line up a bunch of boats in a row, and then I put planks across it and I walk across. And then when I'm done, I can just sail the boats away. And I don't have to build a bridge. So he went across. Now, remember, last week, these cities are Greek cities, right? But Persia conquered them. And now the Persian king comes along and he just says, I want you to give me ships. I want you to give me soldiers. Do it. We're going to Scythia. And they don't have any choice. So he brought a group of these Ionian Greeks with him, and he said to them, guard the bridge. That was their job. If I don't come back in 60 days, you can go home, because that means I'm dead. My army's been wiped out. But you wait for 60 days. Don't let anyone break this bridge. Because if I need to leave in a hurry, I need there to be a bridge. If somebody's chasing me, I need there to be a bridge. So I said, okay. So Darius goes on, and he's just running around Scythia. He's just chasing them. And the Scythians are so smart, they burn all the food as they go past. So Darius' army has nothing to eat. They're starving. It is kind of funny. In a twisted way. It is funny. he did not reckon on these Scythians being so tough. And this is the part you're going to like. All right, just a second. My husband said, beware of the antenna. I know. I see you're all supposed to admire it. My husband said, did they admire it yesterday? I'm like, well, I only used it for 3 students yesterday, but okay, we're going to now I'm so scared of breaking this antenna. We have a very long history book that's awesome that my high schoolers read last year called The History of the Persian War. This is the entire history of the Persians attacking Greece. But he tells you everything. This is why it's so long. This is why he's so amusing, because he can't focus. He has no focus. He just tells you everything. So he tells us all about the Scythians. He tells us all about this campaign. And I got to tell you a couple of things about these Scythians. All right. So, and then I'll tell you one thing to show you what kind of guy Darius was. All right. Scythians. The skulls of their enemies, not indeed of all, but of those whom they most detest, they treat as follows. Having sawn off the portion below the eyebrows and cleaned out the inside, they cover the outside with leather. When a man is poor, this is all that he does. But if he is rich, he also lines the inside with gold. In either case, the skull is used as a drinking cup. Nice. They do the same with skulls of their own kith and kin if they have been at feud with them and have vanquished them in the presence of the king. We will drink out of the skulls of our enemies and maybe our cousins if they tick us off. See, you liked it, didn't you, Matthias? You liked it. But if you like that, just wait. This was a favorite one with my older son. So when a king of the Scythians dies, like your parents are, see, you're going to go tell all the other parents, don't send your children in there again. She tells the most horrid stories. Okay, when a king dies, they stuff him full of herbs. You know, they mummify him. Not the refined way the Egypts, they had it down to a science. But they basically clean him out and stuff him full of stuff and make him into like an herbal scarecrow of sorts. And then they wait a year. I don't know why they wait, but they wait around a year. And then in another year, here's what they do. Okay. When a year has gone by, further ceremonies take place. 50 of the best of the late king's attendants are taken, all native Scythians, for as bought slaves are unknown in the country, the Scythians' kings choose any of their subjects they like to wait on them. 50 of these are taken and strangled, with 50 of the most beautiful horses. When they are dead, their bowels are taken out and the cavity cleaned and filled full of chaff and straightway sewn up again. This done, a number of posts are driven in the ground in sets of 2 pairs each, and on every pair, half the felly of a wheel is placed archwise. Then strong stakes are run lengthwise through the bodies of the horses from tail to neck, and they are mounted upon the fellies so that the felly in front supports the shoulders of the horse while the behind sustains the belly and quarters, the legs dangling in midair. I always have to do that because I picture them dangling. Each horse is finished with a bit and a bridle, which latter is stretched out in front of the horse and fastened to a peg. The 50 strangled youths are then mounted severally on the 50 horses. To effect this, a second stake is passed through their bodies, which along the course of the spine to the neck, the lower end of which projects from the body and is fixed into a socket made in the stake that runs lengthwise down the horse. The 50 riders are thus ranged in a circle around the tomb and so left. So, in my family, this has a name because my son came and when he was reading this, he came and he said, it's a merry-go-round. He said, it's the merry-go-round of death. And we refer to this as the merry-go-round of death because, I mean, that's what it is, right? Horses with a guy in a circle. It's a merry-go-round. It's the merry-go-round of death. We still talk about this sometimes in our families. Remember the merry-go-round of death? Aren't you glad you came today? Wow. Okay, so these are the guys that Darius is chasing. Although Darius is nobody to mess with either, because listen to one more story that Herodotus tells us. It was then, hey, Jesse, you're going to miss it. This is good. Don't want to miss it. There might be death. Oh, okay. Make a merry-go-round of death. We should, no. It'd have to be statues. We can't go killing other people to join you in death. If you want to make a merry-go-round of death out of stone. Okay. As Darius was leaving for the expedition, Herodotus tells us this. It was then that a certain Persian by name Iobazus was the father of 3 sons, all of whom were to accompany the army, came and prayed the king that he would allow one of his sons to remain with him. Darius made answer, as if he regarded him in the light of a friend who had urged a moderate request, that he would allow them all to remain. Iobazus was overjoyed, expecting that all his children would be excused from serving. The king, however, bade his attendants take the 3 sons of Iobazus and forthwith put them to death. Thus they were all left behind, but not till they had been deprived of life. Oh, all your kids can stay. Yeah, but not alive. These were some rough guys. But anyway, the Scythian roughness won out over Darius's roughness. He just couldn't catch them. And while he's running all over the countryside looking for them, and it's rough country too. It's hilly, it's not just pleasant meadows.
It's not like Nebraska.
No, it's not like Nebraska. What? More like Dubuque. Maybe a little more, maybe like northwest of Dubuque. Okay, up by Holy Cross. Anyway, it's just so random. It's just the most fun thing. The Scythians snuck around behind him, and they went to those Greeks who were guarding the boat bridge and said, "Break it. You don't like him. You don't want to be ruled by the king of Persia. Break the bridge. We'll take care of the rest. We'll get rid of him. Just break it." And then they had a terrible choice to make, because what if they do break it and Darius dies? Yay. Except there will be a new king of Persia. And the new king of Persia will probably come after them and punish them. If Darius doesn't die, he will come after them. Either way, breaking the bridge is just not.
If they don't break the bridge, they're going to be overrun and killed anyway.
By the Scythians?
Yeah.
Except the Scythians weren't really threatening them. They were just saying, work with us. They were seeing them as allies, not as potential enemies. They're like, you don't like him any more than we do. So they needed some way to get rid of the Scythians. And they said, oh, sure, we'll do that. Look at us breaking the bridge. But they just took a couple of boats out, and then as soon as the Scythians left, they put them back in. One of these guys was actually from Miletus, one of these guys guarding the bridge. And he had left a companion of his in charge in his absence. The companion thought, well, Darius is running all over Scythia. I should just rebel. I should just rebel against the king of Persia. But he really couldn't get people on board. You can't really rebel by yourself. You need it. You could, but you won't do well. It won't last long. And he couldn't get, yes. But the people on Naxos, they decided to rebel. And he said, great, I'll throw in my lot with them. So, which takes us to our Dorothy Mills reading. Hang on, give me a moment and see where I want to get. The people in Miletus decided we need allies. And you know what? We're Greek. If we go back to Greece and ask our Greek friends for help, I mean, we don't really know them personally. We've lived in Miletus our whole lives. But technically, we're Greek. We should just go back and ask them for help. Yes, Rhett, what was your comment or question? Perhaps. But strange things do happen, as we learned at the end of today, and we're going to end at in the next couple of weeks. They went to Sparta first, and they told the king of Sparta, look, you should join us, and we're going to bump off the king of Persia. We're going to take over his realm. He's so rich. You will not believe the amazing stuff you're going to come away with. Now, he's talking to the king of Sparta. where they don't really have gold or money or jewels or anything. This is not helpful. Finally, it says the king asked him, okay, so if we were going to attack this king, so how far do we have to go? How far away is it from the sea? Now, it must be remembered that no part of Greece was far from the coast, and that no Greek, not even a Spartan who was a soldier rather than a sailor, was happy if he felt out of reach of the sea. So the feelings of the Spartan king can be understood when he was told that to reach the city of the king of Persia was a journey of 3 months from the sea. His mind was quickly made up. Guest friend from Miletus, he said, get thee away from Sparta before the sun has set, for thou speakest a word which sounds not well in the ears of the Lacedaemonians, desiring them to take a journey of 3 months away from the sea. We don't do that. No, she was just trying to make it sound old-fashioned. No, that's like King James. That's not ancient Greece. So then they went to Athens, and Athens said, you bet. You bet we'll help you. They sent ships and seized Miletus, and they seized Sardis. Sardis is the capital of this province. And whether they meant to or not, a fire got out of hand, and they burned that baby to the ground. It was gone. Gone. And Darius got word. By now, he is home from Scythia. He has given up on the Scythians. He inquired who the Athenians were. I've never even heard of this place. Who's this Athens place? Who are they that burned my cities down? When he had been informed, he asked for his bow, and having received it and placed an arrow upon the string, he discharged it upward towards heaven. And as he shot into the air, he said, Zeus, that it may be granted me to take vengeance upon the Athenians. Having so said, he charged one of his attendants that when dinner was set before the king, he should say 3 times, Master, remember the Athenians. Every time he eats dinner, remember the Athenians. They get them. Well, Naxos rebelled. That was the island that rebelled. And they joined in with it. They also got punished. Everybody's going to get punished for this. It says, well, I won't try to find it. See what time it is. The Persians came, as you would expect. They killed most of them, enslaved the rest. Same in Sardis. Everybody who was left after the fires. And back in Athens, when they heard Miletus had fallen, oh, shoot, I'm doing it again. So what did the Athenians do to earn the hatred of Darius? Just say it. They burned Sardis down, burned their capital down. And okay, I was about to tell you the answer to the next one. I just caught myself. Why did the capture and fall of Miletus upset the Greeks so much? Why? They live all the way over here. Why do they care what happens over here? Yeah. Yes, it was important to their military. In what other way was Miletus important? Up to that time, she had been the greatest of the Greek cities. She was rich not only in material wealth, but in all that concerned the intellectual life, and now she had fallen. This was their prize city. You know, we kind of think of Athens as being the prize city of Greece, but Athens hadn't built all those buildings yet that you're like the Parthenon and all those things. Those were built after this. It was Miletus. Miletus was the great Greek city. And Dorothy Mills tells, actually Herodotus, all these little quotes are from that book by Herodotus. It says, an Athenian dramatist composed a drama called The Capture of Miletus and put it on the stage. The body of spectators fell to weeping. And the Athenians, moreover, fined the poet heavily on the grounds that he had reminded them of their own calamities and ordered that no one in the future should represent this drama. It's like if somebody made a movie about 9/11 and everybody who went to see it cried so hard, they're like, we're burning all copies of that movie. It is now illegal to show that movie. It just upsets people too much. No, I'm saying if that happened, that did not happen. But it happened here. Like you were never putting that play on again. That is too depressing. It's just too upsetting. No. Not in Athens or anywhere else. What? No, we do not. We only know this from Herodotus, that there was a play that they put on and they banned it and got rid of it. So we don't know what it was. Hold on. Let me get a drink. Don't lose control while I get a drink. So Darius has a guy standing next to him at dinner saying, "Sire, remember the Athenians." And finally he says, we're going to go get them. It's time. And he sends his general Mardonius. Now, the people in the ancient world, when they didn't have to sail far from the land, they didn't, because it was risky. Lots of storms in the Mediterranean. Sometimes you did have to cut across, but if you didn't, it was nice to hug the land. And so Mardonius took this fleet, and they gathered all the armies over here, so that instead of sailing straight across, they sail around. Okay, they sail up and around so that they can be next to the land. And I think I mentioned to you, like Greek sailors would sleep on the land. You just sail as far as you can in a day. It's like us, road trip, right? Then you get out of your car and you go in the hotel and you sleep. They go off the boat and they sleep. They get back on the boat in the morning. Problem being, they came around here, and do you see this thing that looks like a paw print? A pitchfork, paw print, whatever. Use your imagination. The upper claw or tine of the pitchfork right here, this is very mountainous. Big rocks, barren. It's called Mount Athos. And today it's actually full of Orthodox monks. Yes, it's the chief Orthodox monastic community in the world, just filled with abbeys of Orthodox monks. But at the time, obviously, it was just a barren rock, and it was notorious for storms breaking out, waves hitting and dashing against the rocks, and it wiped out half of his fleet. So he went home. 2 years later, they decide to come again. We're not making the same mistake. We're sailing across. And you know what? Well, we're stopping at Naxos, and we're going to get them because they rebelled too. We'll just burn their houses down and enslave and kill a bunch of them. So they did. But they're heading this way. Yes. Possibly. I don't know that they lost a lot. I don't know the stats, but these guys they knew they were coming, I'm sure, but it was the entire Persian army. And I should have looked this up in Herodotus. We're talking about 50 to 100,000 people, lots of ships. You don't really stand a lot of chance. And frankly, Rhett, Darius doesn't care if he loses some people because he's got plenty. I mean, I hate to say it that way, because it sounds like I'm not saying I don't care, but Darius doesn't care. They're like the expendable ones on Star Trek or something with the red shirts. So he sailed across, and Athens said, "They're coming. We need help. Hey, Phidippides, come here. You're a brilliant runner. You're like a professional messenger, professional herald." Yeah, he's pretty close. He's really good. You need to run to Sparta. Okay, Athens, Sparta, 150 miles. 150 miles. Get there ASAP and tell those Spartans, Persians are coming and we need you. Yeah, Jesse.
Did he run for like 2.5?
It said he made it in 48 hours.
So he ran straight.
Yeah. Which explains the end of the story when we get to that. He ran to Sparta and he said, "Hey, we need help. You guys are the premier soldiers of Greece." "Well, we'd like to help, but we're having a moon festival right now. It's really not a good omen for us to leave in the middle of the moon festival. Give us a few days and we'll be there." We don't have a few days. So Phidippides needs to get this message back as soon as possible. So he runs back. And he tells them, the Spartans aren't coming. They're not coming in time. We're going to have to do this on our own. So they had a general named Miltiades, and he said, okay, we need to not wait for them to march to Athens. Our children and our wives are here. We need to go out and meet them away from the city and save our families, if at all possible. Do everything we can to keep them away from the city. So they marched across this, this peninsula to where, it was more up here, to a little town called Marathon. It was 24 miles away from Athens. And they said, we're going to wait for him here. And there's different versions. Unfortunately, we have different versions coming down to us, and Herodotus isn't real great about the nuts and bolts of this battle. But it seems that in the process of unloading their horses and their men from the ships, you know how, have you ever waded in the water, you know, and the waves are splashing and the sand gets out from under your feet and you're not very steady? You probably wouldn't want to fight with someone right then when the waves are hitting you and the sand is washing from under your feet. This is what was happening to the Persians. And the Athenians rushed them. 10,000 Athenians. Oh, and 1,000 guys from the dear little town of Plataea who said, we won't let you do this alone. We'll send 1,000 guys. Like that's really going to help, you know what I mean, against 50 to 100,000 soldiers. But it did. When Pheidippides was running back to say, Spartans aren't coming, he saw a vision. He thought it was the god Pan. Pan is a woodland god. And he said, hey, Pheidippides, why do the Athenians not have a temple to me? You have temples to other gods. If you build one to me, you know what? I will help you. I will help you against the Persians. And they say, Herodotus says, on the battlefield, there were larger than life apparitions. One of them being Pan, which drove the enemy into a panic. That's what panic means. It's the frenzy you're driven into by Pan. Some people also think they saw Theseus come back to help his city. I neither affirm or deny the rumors, but what I can tell you is the Greeks won. Those 11,000 Greeks. Dorothy Mills says 6,000 dead Persians, a couple hundred dead Greeks. Hey, Pheidippides, you ran 300 miles round trip, and then you fought a battle. Why don't you run back to Athens for us and tell them we won? He did. He ran back, and the story that has come down to us is that he burst through the streets of the city saying, victory is ours, and then he collapsed and died from exhaustion. Oh, we laugh? That is not the response. It is ironic. So, one of my students yesterday said, oh, it's ironic. It's ironic that he did all that running from a town called Marathon. It is not ironic. It is actually the reason we call a marathon a marathon. A marathon is a race in honor of Pheidippides. Every time you hear about a marathon or you run one, they are running in honor of Pheidippides. Now, actually, you ask because maybe I'm about to answer it, but maybe not. Go ahead. I don't know. I don't have any other information about him. But so this part I'm telling you off sort of my memory. I didn't look this up, so this is now Mrs. Ferguson's thinks she remembers this. Okay. When the Olympic Games started up again in 1896, they wanted to have a marathon because it would be awesome because of Pheidippides, you know. And but they wanted the runners. They knew where they wanted them to start, but they wanted them to come right to the judges panel, and it was not quite the distance of Pheidippides. It was 26 miles. That's why our marathons are 26 miles. Marathon's actually closer to 24 miles from Athens, but it's quibbling over a couple of miles. It's very close. But anyway, that's why we call it a marathon. The Battle of Marathon gets put into those books they like to write. The 10 decisive battles of history. The 10 most important battles. And why? I guess I answered who was Pheidippides at great length. Why is the Battle of Marathon so important in history? What did Dorothy Mills tell you? We don't know. Because Mrs. Ferguson said so. Yes, Matthew. Okay, it was, yes. The Persians had never really, I mean, the Scythians beat them in a sense because they just kept running away and they were uncatchable. But no one had really withstood being conquered by Persia except the Scythians, who didn't have much to conquer anyway. She also tells us this. The Battle of Marathon was one of the great events in history. For the first time, the East and the West had met in conflict, and the West had prevailed. We divide these continents. Have you ever noticed that Europe and Asia are joined? They don't, it's all just one big blob of land, technically. Well, no, the rivers go the wrong direction. They are combined. And Central America is just sort of this nebulous thing that I don't know what its boundaries are. It's just the buffer. It's the buffer between the two. So, so continents are not hard and fast. But in general, we divide Europe and Asia right here at the Hellespont. This is Europe, this is Asia. And so the Greeks had an idea of Asians. And so when we say Asians, we are thinking of China and the Far East, but anybody on this side of that line was Asian to them. The Israelites were Asian, right, for them. And anybody on that side of that line, they thought of them as being, what were we saying? Not sober and temperate, like the Cretans, but luxurious and silks and satins and not really tough, not real men. We're real men. And those Persians, they're just sissies. All right, yes. That was the idea. But of course, they kept conquering people. That's the problem with that description. But this is the first time, but is it the first time? No, technically not, because Troy is an Asian city. That was the first showdown between Europe and Asia. But because, and okay, spoiler alert, the Greeks are going to finally win the whole thing. I think you already knew that. And that is why European culture is not Persian. If Greece had been conquered, they would all be speaking Persian. They would have become Persian, Eastern, Asian, and they did not. And since they sent out colonies to Italy, and Rome borrowed their culture, and Rome gave birth to Europe, and Europe gave birth to us, this is a moment in history where if it had gone the other way, we might all be wearing, I don't know, turbans and I don't know what the Persians wore then, silky robes. We would have a very different culture. We would have a very different legal system. Everything would have changed at that moment. Yeah, Jesse. Oh, I'm sorry. I made you wait so long.
Wait, did you
What? Oh yes, because it was the showdown between East and West that said the West is going to become something different than the East. Okay, do it, Jesse. What? It is not, because the Russians are actually Vikings. Weirdly, I know we talked about that last year, didn't we? The Vikings came from Scandinavia, and by rivers they went towards Russia with sometimes trading posts and sometimes just killing people like Vikings do, but sticking around afterwards. And this is why Russian people are European looking, but like Chinese people and the rest of Southern Asia are not, have a different gene pool, have a different look about them, because the Russians are really European. I got to read my poem now about the Battle of Marathon, so I don't forget at the end. Then we'll do our writing. Okay. Here it comes. The Athenians and the Persians could never get along. Each accused the other of doing something wrong. Their armies met at Marathon, a flat and grassy plain. Any hopes they had for peace were totally in vain. Athens won the battle, but how to send the news? Back then there was no CNN with handy TV crews. Athens was 26 miles away. I'll get there, a brave soldier cried. He ran all the way without making a stop, told the people, then fell down and died. Today it's a race with a blistering pace, with runners from Maine to Seattle. The marathon run, hardest under the sun, is named for this ancient Greek battle. Now, do you think Darius is just going to let them get away with this? Has anything we have talked about lead you to believe he's just going to go home and say, oh, well, we tried. That's too bad. But I guess I'm just going to stay home now. In what way? Yes, we did beat them. They did come over again. We whooped them again. Are we thinking of the, see, my mind's going on a digression. I'm going to keep myself from it. Darius is not going to take this sitting down, as they say. He's going to come back and say, you dirty, rotten Greeks, especially Athens. I left out a part of the story. May I just backtrack before we do our writing and just stick a part of the story in? When Darius decided to come, he thought it would be so much easier if they just surrendered and I didn't have to fight anybody. So he sent messengers to all the major cities in Greece, and he said, give the king earth and water as a sign that you submit. In other words, here, I give you some of our dirt. That means I give you the land. I give you our water. I give you our resources. We surrender. And many of them did, but they say they threw both of them down. They both did this, Athens and Sparta. Said, not that I know of, just a well. However, if the well is deep enough, it is not going to end well for you when you get at the bottom of the well. Now, here's something I was thinking about yesterday. Do you guys know, I'm sure you know, it's always been considered bad form to kill messengers. Do we know this? Like it's just a standard thing in stories. It's always been that way. Because if messengers aren't assured that they're going to be safe, nobody will want to be a messenger. And if nobody wants to be a messenger, how do you send a message to the enemy and say, I want to surrender? Or let's make a truce. Yes. You would, a couple thousand years early. Yes. Smoke signals. I don't know. No, in general, when you send a messenger, the messenger is safe. And I have never read, Herodotus doesn't tell me, I've never read where it said, and they died. Because, you could toss somebody, not all wells are super deep, you know what I mean? You could toss someone in a pit and not kill them, might break their leg or something. And but if you don't feed them or let them out, they will. But if you feed them or let them out later, maybe they were just irate. I don't know if those guys died. That's what I'm trying to say. It occurred to me, I've never read somewhere where it says, and they never went back, and they died. It just says they pitched them in a well. I'm assuming that they died. This did not make Darius any more friendly to them. But listen to this. A lot of the cities gave the earth and water. Thebes did it. Look, they were afraid that Persia would eventually come and not come by sea, but might march a huge army over land. And you know what? That is what they're going to do next. And when they come south, they're going to hit these cities first. And the cities up here thought, we do not stand a chance. We better surrender now, and at least they won't kill us all. So this next week, I want you to read find it. Chapter 9. Here, we're done. I think we're done with this. Actually, before we take this away, I want to put some things on our maps and our timelines. But for next week, I want you to read chapter 9, parts 1 and 2, which is pages 139 to 153, if your book is like mine, if it looks just like mine. And we're going to read Trojan War, part 3. We'll talk about the Trojan War here at the end after we do our reading. But while we have our reading guides out, let's add a couple of things to our timelines. First of all, let's do the map, and then I can take the map down. Go to page 75. Page 75, the map on page 75 looks exactly like this map. It's the same edges and everything. So you ought to be able to look at this map if I point to something on this map and find it on your map. And the first thing I would like to put on there is Miletus. Miletus is right here. So everybody look at your map. So you see it's on the coast of Asia Minor. And do you see how this juts out? There's a couple of islands that jut out. It's just south of that. Miletus. It's spelled exactly like it sounds. M-I-L-E-T-U-S. Miletus. Which is really where the war broke out. It was really ground zero when they decided to rebel. So are we good? Did we all find Miletus? Can we also add Troy? Because we're talking about the Trojan War. Right up here at the mouth of the Hellespont, the channel that goes up towards the Black Sea, Troy. Did we already put Athens and Sparta on our maps? Okay. Oh, we should do Athens. So here's Troy. Are we good with Troy? Did we find it? Okay, Athens is right here. Do you see how we have the Peloponnese? And then there's a strip of Greece that comes down like this. Athens is right here. Near which poor Theseus's dad flung himself into the Aegean Sea when Theseus came back with the black sails. Bad idea. Sardis? Why not? Why not? How about, okay, one more. Oh, did you put it away? It's like, oh, shoot. Okay, north of Miletus. Parallel to the islands here. Sardis, S-A-R-D-I-S. Sardis. All right, and don't close your books because we're going to add a couple of things to your timelines. Are we good? Sardis good? All right, this is coming down. So let's find out what page it is in your book. Go to page 72. I know this probably. So you should have a timeline that has 500 BC at the top and 1 BC at the bottom. And I want to put the Battle of Marathon on here because it is one of the, if you memorize history dates, this is a good one to memorize. 490 BC. 490 Battle of Marathon. You know what we're going to do? The page before that should look like this. Should be 1,000 to 500. If you go backwards a page. Can we also put, let me move this for you guys. 536. Cyrus sends Israelites back to Judah. Since we talked about, I didn't write that very big. Can you see that? Cyrus sends Israelites back to Judah. They ended their 70-year captivity. So think about this. When this is happening, it's 46 years after Cyrus sent the Israelites back. They're working on rebuilding Jerusalem while this is happening. They're working on rebuilding the temple while this is happening. It's happening at the same time. We'll revisit the timelines when we do Rome, and you'll find out what's happening in Rome too. It's really interesting to find out the things that are happening at the same time. People who could have known each other if they'd been at the same place, because they lived at the same time. We just forget about that. Okay, are we good? Okay, I'm taking this away. We are going to talk about your writing now. We are going to do another assignment just like the one we did. And then next week is you guys' last week before a break. Make me feel bad. You don't want to come. No. They have other things to do. It's okay. It's okay. So we're going to do this one in 1 week, and then I'm going to give you a 2-week assignment for over your break. So, but it's not double the length. Oh, don't make that face. You don't need a break. You're a big kid. Like, I never had a fall break in school. That's nuts. Kids, yeah, we went to school 365 days a year. We walked through the snow. No, that is all a lie. None of that happened. But we didn't get a fall break. Yes. We always did school when my kids, we did 6 weeks on and 1 week off all year round. It was our Jubilee week. And we just always did 6 weeks on, 1 week off. Oh, no school on your birthday. Amen to that. Go ahead, go to page 14 in your reading guide, and it will give you a blank page. How many of you have notebook paper with you? Okay. Does everybody have notebook paper? Do you have it? Okay, why don't you do this for me? Do this on notebook paper. Here's why. Everybody listen to this. I would really like you to give me your outlines this week. And it's nothing personal, but I have a few, and I don't even know that it's in here, but I have a few students that I'm just not sure they're outlining that they get it. And so I just kind of wanted to see it. So it'd be lovely if you wrote your outline on something that you could tear out and then just staple it to the back of your paper. I would like your outline. If it is written in something you can't, I suppose you could take 5 minutes and write it on another piece of paper for me, but I would really like to see your outline. Anyway, get a piece of paper out. You'll find out in a moment. First, we got to write our outline out. So make an outline for me, but I want you to add something. I want you to write the word clincher at the end of each paragraph. Some of you have done this. Some of you are saying, I don't even know what that means. That is fine. Everyone will know what it means before we leave today. It is super easy. Don't freak out. Do not panic.
It's just 6 more sentences.
It's not. Don't listen to them.
How many paragraphs?
We're doing 2 paragraphs. So we're doing exactly the same thing we just did. We're actually going to do the first paragraph together because it's fun. But but you're going to do the second paragraph on your own. But I would like to see your outline. We are writing on Greek music and poetry. But it's more fun than it sounds when you see what's on the back. Oh, as I walk through the room without my cord. Oh, so delightful. I'm wireless now. I'm high tech. There you go. And they go, ma'am. Okay. I got to find it in the book. This is another page from this Usborne guide. Using poetry, page 54. So again, let me remind you. Hey guys, I'm very excited today. Maybe you do need a break. Remember that a paragraph, you don't have to write this down, but if it helps you remember, you can, equals a topic. When I choose a topic for a paragraph, I know that all the sentences in that paragraph are going to talk about that topic. And the great thing about these pages is they give you topics, don't they? So the main heading is music and poetry, but we see we have various choices. Musical instruments, poetry, Apollo and the Muses. On the back, we have parties and games, and toys and games. I thought this went well with last week because we heard their wonderful jug that they get when they're 3, we assume, but nothing about other toys. We're going to choose one other. I can't do it. How do I know what to choose for my outline? There's a lot of stuff here. Well, okay. I guess that I asked that question partly. We're going to do our first paragraph on parties and games. Go ahead and write that down, because who doesn't love parties and games? Oh, no, I'm going to say parties, games in Greece. That is my topic. Parties and games in ancient Greece. Now, how do I choose what to put on my outline about parties and games? Or interesting or important? I think cool and bloody in your case would be interesting. What? Interesting or disgusting? Or important. In other words, if you're writing about a topic and you feel like it's something everybody really ought to know, you may not personally find it amazing, but you feel like everybody really ought to know this about that topic, or they don't really understand it. Okay? I'm going to read the written, it's all written. I'm going to read the paragraphs here first, and then we'll go around the figures at the table, in the little comments, okay? Here we go. Dinner parties were a favorite leisure activity. It is for us too. Okay. A man would invite several male friends to his house for a meal. That's what a dinner party is. The guests were met at the door by slaves who washed their hands and feet. I kind of like that. Like you get a little, wash down. But
Are those the slaves that were
these are the slaves.
those heathens that the parents didn't know?
Maybe. Now, I feel like if I just put washed hands, feet, I'm really not going to remember what the context is. So I feel like maybe I had to fill in dinner parties popular. Even though I didn't think that was so amazingly interesting, I've botched it here. Dinner parties popular. Now I can put, how can I say that in 3 words about getting your hands and feet washed?
Right slave, a picture, the door narrow attic, and a bunch of people running the door.
But where's your washing the feet part?
That's fine.
Oh,
But then
we're not loving that because we've taken up 3 lines. How about, what's the most important thing? Slaves do it, and they wash them. Can we ditch either hands or feet? That makes it sound like you have a whole sponge bath. How about slaves wash feet? Because we wash our hands before we eat, but we don't normally wash our feet before we eat. I think that's interesting. That sets it apart. Slaves wash your feet. Just a question for you guys. Why do you think that would be a thing? Why get your feet washed before you go in? What kind of, oh, what do you think? So you don't track mud in because what are most people in the ancient world around the Mediterranean wearing on their feet? Go ahead. Oh, okay. What kind of shoes? Sandals. You know what? Do you ever walk through dusty stuff in sandals? I know your feet pretty disgusting when you take your sandals off. Also, your sandals are pretty disgusting and you gotta wipe them out. It's a problem. People in the ancient world had dirty feet all the time. Romans and Greeks. In fact, do you remember a story where Jesus came to a dinner party? This wasn't in Greece. They were having a dinner party. Yes, sir. Well, that is one dinner party, but I'm thinking about feet in particular. Jesse, do you think you remember?
And then somewhere, there's this girl that washed his feet.
She washed his feet with perfume. Remember, I acted this out yesterday. I don't feel like I should just lay down on the floor here. So when you go to a dinner party in Rome, when you go to a dinner party in Greece, or Israel at that time, which was Rome, right? Romans were in charge when Jesus was here. You had a table with your food, and then you had a couch coming out this way. And so you lay down on the couch and you eat the food. And your feet are away from the couch, right? Because did you ever think about that story? If he's sitting at a table like this, like we do, like what is she crawling around under the table, wiping his feet? How is this working? No, he's laying on a couch and his feet are stuck with, yes, there's a picture, like in the picture there. And so Jesus is laying there and she comes and she dumps this whole jar of expensive ointment on his feet and wipes it off with her hair. And several of the people said, what a jerk thing to do. That was worth a lot of money. We could have sold that and fed a bunch of poor people. Jesus said, you know what? I came in and you didn't even wash my feet. And he says it like it's a thing, because it was a thing. This is the hospitable thing you do. I came in and you didn't even wash my feet. She came and she washed them, but not just with water. Everywhere the gospel is preached, forever, what this woman has done will be told about her. And I'm standing here telling it right now, aren't I? 2,000 years later. Everywhere it's preached, what she did will be told. But he said, you didn't even wash my feet. So anyway, that was a long digression on washing feet. Now we're moving on. Then they lay on couches in a room called the Andron, where food was served by slaves. Do we like to lay on couches or do we want to skip that? What's the vote? Skip it. All right. There was a choice of several dishes for each course. Well, there is for us too. Okay. Once the food was cleared away, the drinking and talking began. This was known as a symposium. I like the drinking party. We're going to talk about the drinking party. Symposium is a drinking party. They did talk, they didn't just drink, but they drank a lot. Do you guys know, we're going to talk about him later this semester, but do you guys know who Plato is? Does that name mean anything to you? Plato was a famous Greek philosopher that we're going to be talking about as we get closer to Christmas. And he actually, he wrote books that were conversations. They were just people talking to each other. And one of them is called The Symposium, and it's people talking at a drinking party. They actually are taking turns telling the praise of love. That's the topic of the drinking party. What is love, and how shall we praise it properly? It's better than it sounds. And there's some drunkenness involved too. So, okay. The guests drank wine, which had been mixed with water in a big vase called a crater. Do we care? Wait, nobody is really wild about that. Oh, Rhett? Yeah. Okay, lay it on. Katabos. I like this. We throw wine at a target. Definitely, we should put that in there. Thank you. They throw wine at a target. Yes. I feel like there was probably some consumption of the wine happening before this was. This it says the dregs. I think they just flicked the wine out of, yeah, it takes some practice. You know, this is another one of Mrs. Ferguson's stories that have no purpose, but I feel like it makes you remember things. They do. It's to help you remember. It's to help you remember what we're talking about. You know Hershey's syrup, chocolate syrup in the jar. So once upon a time, I was at my in-laws' house, and my brother-in-law, we all were having ice cream sundaes, and the Hershey syrup was running low, and he was trying to get it out. It's really, and so you beat it on the table a little bit, but it's cold. And it doesn't run well when you take it out of the fridge. So he closed the top, and he decided to take it from the bottom and just to kind of with force, force it to the top. And he did it a few times, and then he just let fly and the lid flew off, and it just shot chocolate across the ceiling and down to the wall. Just a perfect line of chocolate. And for a couple of years, my mother-in-law would say, "I found some more chocolate in the corner." Anyway, so I can, now I'm feeling sorry for the slaves that have to clean up after one of these. I found some more wine in the corner. The conversation might be a serious discussion about some aspect of life, such as morals or politics. But often parties were more relaxed, with guests playing the lyre, reciting poetry, telling jokes, or posing riddles. Do we like any of that? Rhett's hard to please. It's like, no. Additional entertainment might be provided by a troupe of hired musicians, dancers, or acrobats.
There's parties that with all their musicians.
A wedding reception, I guess. Have you ever been to a party with hired acrobats? A bouncy house, and then you're your own acrobat, I guess, if they rent a bouncy. I'm sorry. I like musicians, dancers, acrobats. Shh, guys, shh. We're doing the topic parties and games, so we're doing this section here. So we can do toys and childhood games. This doesn't sound like a childhood thing. I don't think the children are hanging out at the drinking party. Let's go ahead and read the rest. If I find something really interesting, I could put a 6 in here if I want to. It says, slaves serve the food. Well, we figured that. Each guest had a separate table. Do we like that? Yes. Okay, some of us like that. Okay, I'm going to put a 6. Each own table. Well, we can add a 7 if there's better stuff. Also, hey, Matthias, shh, please. Another thing to keep in mind is if I gather more than I need, I could go back and cross something off, like the least interesting thing. Okay, we already hurled wine at the target. Hired acrobats. Boys were allowed to sit at dinner parties and watch. Did they get to eat? Did they just have to sit there? Did they get to talk to anyone? No, that's only Sparta. Sometimes the guests brought female companions with them, brought their girlfriends, not their wives. Wives wouldn't be allowed. I hate to say that. Not the wives, but the female companions. uh, yeah, different category of lady. Well, okay, let's start with that. Stop with that. So here's what you're going to do this week. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to pick one of the other topics on the paper, and you're going to write the topic here, and then choose what's interesting and important. Now, let me tell you about the clincher, okay? We're done at 10 after. Okay, yes. Sometimes I get the two classes. I know one of them's a quarter till and one of them's 10 after, and I suddenly freak out because I think it's the other one. Let's talk about what this clincher is. I think I already said this to this group, but it kind of goes along with what I'm going to say if I'm saying it again. They say that most of us are not very attentive, that we don't really pay attention to what we read and what people tell us. And so if you really want people to know something, you tell them what you're going to tell them. And then you tell them. And then you tell them what you've told them. And so they get to hear it 3 times.
So you can just copy and paste.
No. That is a sign of a lazy student. I'm just going to say it. Yes. It is really a conclusion or a rehash. Exactly. Another reason to have some sort of sentence to wrap up your paragraph is a paragraph sounds very abrupt. The ending is very abrupt. If you just say a bunch of facts and you quit and your paragraph's over. So often when we write, we like to close a paragraph with something that just ties it all together. And a clincher does that for us. So here's an example. Let me give you the definition of a clincher. A clincher repeats or reflects 2 to 3 keywords from the topic sentence. A clincher repeats or reflects 2 to 3 keywords from the topic sentence.
So would you say as a clincher, so those syntax and
Yeah, exactly. You got it. You got it. Let me give you some more examples. So your example would be repeating. What if my topic sentence were this? Parties and games were popular in ancient Greece. It's a perfectly reasonable topic sentence. It tells you exactly what the paragraph is going to be about. Ancient Greece, parties, games. Got it. Now, the important words, really, I've written down, right? Parties, games, Greece. It would be good if I could write a sentence at the end of my paragraph that uses those words. So say again what you said. Those are some important facts you need to know about parties and games in ancient Greece. Do you see how he repeated the words? Parties, games, Greece. Now, I said you can repeat them or reflect them. Words that mean the same thing. This is, so what Owen did was a step away from Matthias's copy and paste and put the same sentence, okay? You mixed it up a little bit. You said the same thing basically, but you mixed it up. A step away from that would be not even using the exact same words, but using words that mean the same thing. So what's another word for a party? What else could we call a party, Matthew? Festivities. Ooh. So ancient Greek festivities were interesting and lively. And so I've worked Greece, and I've worked in, I didn't say parties and games, but I said festivities, which means kind of the same thing. So it reminds my reader, oh yeah, that's what this paragraph is about. I remember now, that's what we're talking about. Yeah, Rhett. Gatherings, see. What is the name of the book that you go to? Well, you probably don't have it as a book. Maybe you have it on a computer version. What do we call the collection of words that mean the same thing? A thesaurus. A thesaurus is your friend when you're writing a clincher. Although it's perfectly acceptable to use the exact same words again, like we did. That's fine. But no, we don't want to write the exact same sentence as our topic sentence again. Yes, Matthew. Oh, okay. So what I would like you to do this week, are we with me on the back table? We're good? Choose another topic and finish your outline. Then write your paper. I want to see a simile and alliteration. If you are going to forget, write this down where you've just, at the top of your outline. Right now, you can just write at the top, simile and alliteration. And I would like each paragraph to have a clincher, a topic sentence. This is what I'm talking about. Then tell me about it. And then a clincher to wrap it up that repeats or reflects the words or ideas from the topic sentence. Okay. And then I probably wrote on it, did I miss your simile? Sometimes you forget to do it, and then I miss the fact that I missed it. And I apologize. Yes, Matthew. What? Awesome. It means you're so good at similes that they just flow out of you without even trying. That's what that means. That's even better. Okay, is everybody good? So just to recap, because we're going to spend the rest of our time talking about the Trojan War. Okay, and we'll probably get carried away, and suddenly it'll be 10 after. And so let's run over it again. For next week, read chapter 9 in the Mills book, parts 1 and 2. Read part 3 in the Trojan War book, and do this paper. And next week, I will bring you resources, but next week, we will do a 3-paragraph paper. But you'll have a break to do it over, so. It wouldn't take you 2 whole weeks to do it, so. You will have 2 weeks if you want the 2 weeks. I don't approve, but I have nothing to say about that. I guess I did say something about that, didn't I? Said I didn't approve. Okay. Let's talk about the Trojan War. You know, Herodotus had something to say about the Trojan War, very interestingly. The beginning of this huge book with the merry-go-round of death in it and the skull cups. Also, see, I'm about to say something I don't know if I'm supposed to say or not, but I think I'm going to do it. Because it's just amusing. Like if it makes you say someday I want to read Herodotus, then my job is done here. Oh, I'm never going to find it. Oh, wait a minute. I've got a mark. I've got red. Okay, I know you do. Oh, but I want to read it. It's not as much fun if I see. I feel like I might be telling you about something you don't already know. I think you all know this. Okay, it wasn't there. Hang on, I'm really pretty sure. Oh shoot, I marked it in my other copy of Herodotus. Yes, I have more than one, and only two. Okay, so he says, shoot. Okay, he says the Scythians, I'll just tell okay, I'm gonna do my best to just be Herodotus now. The Scythians gather herbs. And they go into a tent and they make a fire with these herbs and then and they sit in the tent for a while, and when they come out, they're sort of drunk. They get drunk on the herbs. What are they doing? Do you know? I know. So there are certain plants that if you smoke them, do we know this? Am I telling you now something terrible? There are certain plants that if you smoke them, it messes with your mind, right? You don't think. So like marijuana is one of these plants. And it really, we don't know, but it sounds an awful lot like they were just having marijuana parties in their tents. I don't know. I find these things so entertaining. I can just picture these Scythians with their skull cups all high on pot, wandering around with their cups, but they still managed to run away from Darius. You would think that they would be easy marks. Anyway, okay, so why was I talking about Herodotus? I remember. Herodotus tells us, he starts his book by saying, I'm going to tell you about how the Persians attacked Greece, but I have to tell you a whole bunch of other stuff first. Obviously, that's why the book is so long. Just a second. And so, no, because that's what makes this book interesting. Because he doesn't skip to the part that actually says it, because he tells us all about Egyptian animals while Cambyses is in Egypt. And he thinks hippos have enormous tails. I don't know about that, Herodotus. But he starts out by saying, I'm going to tell you the story of how the East, my map is gone, but my East came and attacked the West, just like we were talking about. But he said, there's been a long history of East versus West. Let me tell you a little bit about it. And he starts by saying, once upon a time, there was that girl, Europa. Starts with Europa. And she got on a bull, the white bull, and she swam to Crete. And Herodotus says, I don't know if that really happened, but somebody stole this lady. Somebody stole a lady from Phoenicia and took her to Greece. And then later, there was a Greek lady named Io, who the story says Zeus had a crush on, and he turned her into a cow because he couldn't think of anything better to do, apparently. And then Juno knew she was a cow. And anyway, so Io ended up traveling to Asia, ended up in Egypt. So Herodotus says, okay, first, these people stole Europa. Then these people stole Io, I think. There's just a bunch of people stealing women back and forth. But he says, just a second, don't forget. But if I don't do it, I will forget. And my mind is older than yours, so. But he says, in the next generation afterwards, according to the same authorities, Alexander, son of Priam, Alexander is the same as Paris. I don't know why he has two names. We just have to accept it. Alexander, the son of Priam, bearing these events in mind, the woman stealing, resolved to procure himself a wife out of Greece by violence, fully persuaded that as the Greeks had not given satisfaction for their outrages, they stole Io, or they stole Europa, I guess the Greeks did, so neither would he be forced to make any for his. Accordingly, he made prize of Helen, upon which the Greeks decided that, before resorting to other measures, they would send envoys to reclaim the princess and require reparation for the wrong. Yes, their demands were met by a reference to the violence which had been offered to Medea. Remember, Medea is the princess from Colchis who had the golden fleece. And Jason ran off with her. Herodotus says, you know what? Europe and Asia have been at it for generations because they keep stealing each other's women. What is up with the stealing of the women? Now, nobody stole Darius's woman, but yes. I guess to go halfway across the world and kidnap somebody. That's stalking, extreme stalking. Who? Oh, yes. So, I mean, his definition of steal. Of course, here's what Herodotus is doing, though. He's doing what I've been doing. He's saying, okay, this is the story, and I don't really believe all the details of the story, but maybe there's something true in the story. Maybe there was really a lady who got snatched. Do you know? I think we're going to talk about this later, but just in case, I'm going to stick it in here. I don't know. Do you guys know, he's given me a exhibit, the letters that we use. The letters that we use. Where do we get them from? What? Okay, where did they get them from? Where did they get them from? What? Say. No. Boom. The Phoenicians, where Europa is from. Europa, who supposedly came from Phoenicia and got taken to Crete, and then her brother Cadmus, their dad said, go find your sister. And so he did. He never found his sister, but he founded a city called Thebes. And everybody looks back and says, what's the deal? I don't believe this story really about the bull and everything and Cadmus, but somebody came from Phoenicia and visited Greece because they took him the alphabet. So there must be something true in these. And so this takes us to the Trojan War. What is the true part? We don't know. But wars have been started for really not, for trivial, what we would say trivial reasons sometimes. Wars have been started in history for trivial reasons. And I don't know, is it trivial to kidnap someone's wife? To kidnap the queen of a foreign country? Just imagine, if somebody, a lot of countries don't have kings and queens anymore. I mean, I know the queen just died in England and they have a king now, but not kings and queens like we think of in medieval times. But imagine if a country went and stole the queen of another country. That war could break out. No, fortunately, no one ever stole Queen Elizabeth. She made it through her whole reign without getting stolen. That's awesome. But that's Matthias. That's not very nice. She was elderly. Women aren't often very attractive when they were elderly, but she was lovely inside. Anyway, probably not, but still. They say don't speak ill of the dead. That is what they say. Can we go back to the Trojan War, though? Yeah, Jesse, did you have something? Yes, she sent a fly, a gadfly, like a horsefly, to keep. Yes, indeed. So, did this start because somebody stole somebody's wife? Frankly, I don't know. But weirder things have happened. I told you on the first day that we did find a Troy, and it was burned down about the time that the Trojan War would have happened. I don't know. I would like to know, but I don't know. Yeah, Jesse. The gods cause a lot of the problems. Thank you, Jesse. People have remarked that the Greek gods are very much like just people, only bigger and more powerful. But they do the same sorts of shenanigans that people do. They are sinful. They went to get Helen back. Remember all the time that you read this. Agamemnon is in charge of the Greek forces, right? And his brother is Menelaus. Menelaus is the husband of Helen. But Helen's sister is married to Agamemnon. 2 brothers married 2 sisters. They got the fleet ready to go. And do you remember what happened? The wind would not blow in the correct direction, which doesn't matter to us anymore because we have engines on our boats, right? But if you're sailing everywhere, and they hadn't really apparently developed the skill of tacking against the wind. Sailboats can kind of turn the sails and move against the wind. They didn't do that in the ancient world. What happened? What did they need to do to get the wind? I'm glad I mentioned this if no one remembers, because this is an important plot point later. The prophet told Agamemnon, you got to do this if you want the wind. What do you got to do? Tell me. Sacrifice your daughter. Iphigenia. Indeed, that is the proper response. Iphigenia. Now, I don't know. Apparently, this plot point slipped your mind anyway. I'm going to tell you, there are multiple versions of this story, so I may say something that's not exactly what Olivia Coolidge says, but they say that they told her, Iphigenia, the daughter, and her mom, Clytemnestra, Oh, we decided to get her married to Achilles, just to get her to come. And they grabbed her and threw her on the altar. Now, there are also multiple versions of this. In some versions, he killed her. In some versions, the goddess Artemis felt sorry for her and whisked her away and put a phantom Iphigenia or a deer in her place. And the real Iphigenia got whisked off to an island up in the north where she attended a temple, and eventually her brother came and found her there and was so surprised because he thought she was dead and took her home. That's the nice version of the story. The ugly version of the story is he just killed her. So just let me plant this seed for later in the story. Clytemnestra, I'm killing our daughter, and then I'm leaving for 10 years. He doesn't know he's going to be gone 10 years. I'm killing our daughter, then I'm leaving for the war. What do you think Clytemnestra, his wife, is thinking about the whole time he's gone?
Don't come back.
You're going to be sorry if you come back. Indeed. I am not letting this go. You're crazy if you think I'm letting this go. That's Clytemnestra. Remember that. They do go, and parts 1 and 2 that you read this week really take you through the first 9 years of this war. And I did not make a mistake there. 9 years. Apparently the Trojans have really good walls, and they just don't come out and fight. And apparently the Greeks are less than great besiegers. And they just don't fight. But finally, something happens. And that is part 3 you're going to read this week. It is not. I know. So there is a famous poem. You don't have to write this down, okay? It's called the Iliad. And it is by a poet named Homer, about whom we know almost nothing. It's a very long poem. And this poem is part 3 of this book you're about to read next week. It doesn't tell you about the beginning of the war. By the way, it's called the Iliad because the Greeks called Troy Ilium. That was their name for Troy, Ilium. This poem doesn't tell you about the beginning. It doesn't tell you about the Trojan horse. It tells you about a few weeks in the 9th year of the war when one of the Greek warriors has a complete meltdown of rage and anger. And the very first word of this poem is rage. Rage. It's a good topic. It's not a sentence, but it's a good topic sentence. You know what this poem's about the minute you see the first word, rage. Somebody's going to get really angry. And that's the famous story of the Iliad. And you're going to read a retelling of it this week in part 3. I'm sorry, go ahead, Matthias. It is. What were you going to say, Owen? It's part 3 in this book. So we're reading part 3 in this book. Part 3 in this book that you're going to read this week will tell you the famous story of the Iliad, of somebody getting angry and a lot of people getting hurt as a result. A lot of people. Oh, awesome. All right. It is 12 after. You guys may go. Have a good week, and I will see you next time.
I think I love this guy.
Wonderful.